Welcome to Carol and Gary's See America Tour. Hello again, everyone. After visiting the Sioux Locks in our last video, Carol, Jasper, and I drove south to Mackinac City, Michigan. Our stop at the Sioux Locks on the way to Mackinac City was actually a last-minute detour because we heard that the famous 5-mile-long Mackinac Bridge was going to be closed from midnight until noon on September 2nd so that thousands of people, led by Michigan's governor, could walk across the bridge as a way of celebrating Labor Day. The annual Mackinac Bridge Walk has been held every Labor Day since 1958. 40 to 65,000 people participate in this 5-mile walk. So knowing that we couldn't cross the bridge until after the traffic was back to normal, we diverted to Sault Ste. Marie to kill some time while waiting. But let's face it, you can't visit the Upper Peninsula of Michigan without seeing the Sioux Locks. So once we were settled in Mackinac City, we booked a combination train and boat ride to see the Upper Tequamanen Falls the next day. This is the train that we rode for 5.5 miles. We rode through an area that was destroyed by fire a few years earlier. We also saw a couple of eagles flying above us. When we arrived at the Tequamanen River, we boarded a riverboat and enjoyed a 21-mile narrated cruise. The Tequamanen River is famous because it was one of the many rivers used to float cut trees to the sawmills during the late 1890s. Along the way down the river, we saw a large beaver lodge and several bird species. We also saw 3 deer. This is a blue heron. We successfully made it to the Upper Tequamanen Falls. Turns out we could have driven to the Lower Tequamanen Falls and then walked 4 miles to the Upper Falls. Driving would have put us on the other side of the Upper Falls, but the view of the falls from the other side seemed to be better. I would not recommend this tour. On Thursday, September 5th, Carol and I drove back across the Mackinac Bridge and then an hour and a half north to Whitefish Point, where we visited the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum. Lake Superior is, by surface area, the world's largest freshwater lake. This far north, especially late in the year, the temperature combined with high winds can be devastating. The Shipwreck Museum has artifacts from several ships that sunk on Lake Superior. Probably the most well-known shipwreck in recent history is the 729-foot-long Edmund Fitzgerald, which began its final voyage at 2:30 p.m. on November 9, 1975, in Superior, Wisconsin, with a crew of 29 people aboard. They were headed for Detroit, Michigan. Superior, Wisconsin is in the southwest corner of Lake Superior. The ship was loaded with 29,000 tons of iron ore pellets. As they traveled, weather conditions continued to deteriorate. Gale wind warnings were issued in the area at 7 p.m. on November 9th. Another large ship called Arthur M. Anderson was following the Edmund Fitzgerald 10 to 15 miles behind them and was in intermittent radio contact with them. The first mate of the Arthur Anderson talked to the Edmund Fitzgerald at 7:10 p.m. The radar signal from the Edmund Fitzgerald kept getting obscured throughout the evening by waves of 18 to 25 feet, but would eventually return. At 7:15 p.m. the radar signal was lost again, but this time did not reappear. The captain of the Arthur Anderson called the Edmund Fitzgerald at 7:22 p.m. There was no answer. On November 14, 1975, a U.S. Navy plane equipped with magnetic anomaly detector located a strong contact 17 miles north-northwest of Whitefish Point. During the following 3 days, the Coast Guard cutter Woodrush, using side-scan sonar, located 2 large pieces of wreckage in the same area. The following May 1976, the Woodrush was again on the scene to conduct a third side-scan sonar survey. Contacts were strong enough to warrant bringing in an underwater recovery vehicle operated from the Woodrush. The underwater recovery vehicle took 43,000 feet of videotape and 900 photographs of the wreck. On May 20, 1976, the words Edmund Fitzgerald were clearly seen on the stern, upside down, 535 feet below the surface of the lake. On April 15, 1977, the Coast Guard released its official report, saying while the cause was inconclusive, the most probable cause for the sinking was the loss of buoyancy and stability resulting from the massive flooding of the cargo hold. The flooding of the cargo hold was a result of ineffective latch closures. In November 1994, families of the deceased crew members got together in Detroit, Michigan. Discussion led to the families suggesting that one single significant artifact be recovered from the ship to serve as a symbolic memorial. The ship's bell, which was attached to the roof of the pilot house, was unanimously selected to serve this important purpose. Further, it was suggested that a replica bell inscribed with the names of the lost crewmen be placed on the wreck as a permanent grave marker. Since the ship sank in Canadian waters, the Canadian government granted permission to recover the bell and place the replica. Today the bell is displayed at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum. The Whitefish Point Lighthouse is on display near the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum, so we decided to check out the lighthouse while we were there. The Whitefish Point Light, the oldest active light on Lake Superior, began operation in 1849, although the original lighthouse was rebuilt in 1860. The current lighthouse is 75 feet tall. Since 1971, the light, fog signal, and radio beacon have been automated and controlled from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Tours of the lighthouse were very popular and controlled, so we had to wait until others came down before we could climb the narrow stairs. Here was our view of the walkway from near the top of the tower. This is the lighthouse light. After touring the lighthouse, we decided to drive to the nearby Lower Tequamanen Falls. The Lower Tequamanen Falls were very beautiful. A boardwalk provided easy access to walk near the falls. East of the Mackinac Bridge in Lake Huron is a small island called Mackinac Island. This island formed as the glaciers of the last ice age began to melt approximately 1300 BC. The island is just 3.8 square miles and is 7.2 miles from Mackinac City, where Carol and I are staying. 492 people call Mackinac Island their year-round home, but for years hundreds of people have made Mackinac Island their summer home. And with the summer tourists comes the need for summer help to support the tourists. So what makes Mackinac Island so unique? On July 6, 1898, the Mackinac Island Village Council banned horseless carriages from its streets, and this law still stands today. Michigan Highway 185 encircles the island, but it's not wide enough to support cars. In fact, it's the only state highway in the country that prohibits automobiles. Carol and I decided to visit Mackinac Island on September 9th. There are several ferries available to take you to the Mackinac Island. Our ferry ride took 30 minutes, but our boat captain, as they probably all do, drove under the Mackinac Bridge before heading to the island. Here is a short video as we approached the Mackinac Bridge and then went under. I'd be lying if I said that the streets of Mackinac Island were quiet and peaceful. As you can see, there were tourists everywhere. This is the Biddle House and is soon to be the oldest house on Mackinac Island. Parts of it date back to 1780. And now, after a quick ride back to Mackinac City on the ferry, Carol, Jasper, and I will be packing up to drive further south tomorrow. We have been having problems with our 30-foot slider on the driver's side of the motorhome again. Since the motorhome was assembled in Elkhart, Indiana, I called the manufacturer and asked for advice. They said that they are all booked up for the rest of the year, but recommended a large maintenance shop nearby, so I made an appointment for September 30th. Until then, we will be exploring Michigan as we make our way closer to Elkhart. If you like this video but have not yet subscribed, please do so to be notified of future videos, and as always, feel free to share with your friends. Thanks for watching.